Welcome back. This is John Locke, and today I'm talking about an article that was recently published in Bloomberg uh, and also a follow up thread that was on Hacker News. Now, the original article and the thread, I'll put them both below in show notes so you can check them out. The original article in Bloomberg was talking about the apparent monopoly that Google has in the search engine market, particularly in the US and Europe. And the author was suggesting that a way to break up that monopoly would be to give public access to their index of all the web pages and documents that they've crawled, and then allow other search engines, up and coming search engines, to build on top of that. Now, I don't want to really focus too much on that, but I want to focus on the comments in the Hacker News thread that were made by an ex-engineer from Google who has kind of a bit of an inside view on what would work and what wouldn't work as far as the search engines going. So the current Google index probably has about 150 billion pages, billion with a B. But what the engineer said is during their time at Google, when they would do tests and experiments, they would use the top 4 billion pages for those. If they needed something different, which wasn't very often, then they would dig into the 150 billion other pages. Now, something that they mentioned that was very interesting is there already is a service that has a public API with 3 billion pages on the web called Common Crawl, and I'll link that one up down in the show notes below as well. But if you were a search engine or you were a startup trying to build a new search engine, you could definitely start there. It's already publicly available. If you're a programmer, you could get at it very easily. So the ex-Google engineer said that one of the advantages that Google has is consumer habits. And over the last 20 years, people have become very accustomed to using Google to find what they need. And they can find pretty much anything they need. They know no matter what, you're going to get pretty close to the correct answer. And it's become a habit. It's become part of people's everyday lives. In fact, the word Google is a synonym for searching on a search engine. So that kind of a brand awareness is really hard to go up against. The habit is what builds the brand, and any up-and-coming search engine has to fight against that. So one of the articles that was, or one of the ideas, I should say, that was floated in the Bloomberg article was the idea of niche search engines that dealt with a specific category. And I don't know if anybody remembers the late 90s, the early 2000s. Google was not the first search engine. In fact, they were the 21st search engine to the market. And my memory of that time as a consumer is not super crystal clear, but I think that there were a couple niche search engines at that time. The problem with the niche search engines is a good search engine will surface ideas and things that you had no idea existed before. It will show you new things. And having a bunch of niche search engines takes away some of that power. When you are isolated, you have less power. There's less power in isolation, and there's more power in having access to the entire set of data, the entire data set. And that's what the Google Index is. If you have a bunch of niche search engines, eventually what happens is you have to have a search engine for the search engines. And the other problem is who is going to determine what's better. You need to have people who have a really deep knowledge of those particular niches. And even then, you're not going to overcome people knowing that they can just go to Google no matter what the subject is, and they're going to find what they're looking for. Another thing that the engineer talked about was the computational level. Google is really hard to replicate. Now, let's look at how a very basic search engine works. Is you go and you crawl a bunch of pages, you put that in your index, and let's say that somebody has a query that they type in. They type in a search phrase, and what you do is scan the documents for instances of that phrase, and then you stack rank the results. You pre-sort them and then show those in the results. And that's how search engines worked in the 1990s. But how it works today and how Google does it today is they don't pre-sort. And in fact, what this engineer said that was really crazy to me is they don't just look at the specific query, the specific search phrase. They look at other things that are similar, and then they have a sorted list of all documents that seem to fit in that would be relevant to that query. And the index is stored in memory, meaning, and something that was really crazy, what the engineer said is they actually touch all the documents that are in that sorted list of documents. So essentially, they're not doing a pre-sort. They're looking at everything that is relevant in that topic cluster, and then not only searching for specific mentions of the phrase that you just typed in, but they're also looking at other searches that are correlated to that. So this is a big engineering feat and a very difficult thing to overcome if you are a search engine that's up and coming. That just thinking about the computational speed of what that engineer just said, that's kind of crazy. But it gives a clue, to me it gives a little bit of a clue that they do kind of have a reference point of certain sites or certain pages. They know that they fit into certain categories because they don't touch all 150 billion pages in their index, but they do look at all the pages that are kind of already clustered into a category or a topic. Now, this engineer could not say everything that they do. They had to phrase the things, carefully because, of course, it's proprietary knowledge. So a competing search engine would have to do something different from this. And that's the challenge. You'd have to not only match what Google is doing, you'd have to do something better. Now, something interesting that the ex-Google engineer said about web spam, duplicate detection and actually redirects are somewhat difficult. So duplicate detection, and we have a video about this, like duplicate content being a so-called penalty. It's actually a little bit difficult to do that at a computational level. And redirects as well, which is why they always say, like, don't have more than 4 redirects in the chain before you end up at the final web page. Last thing I want to touch on what the engineer said is when we talk about PageRank, which is a formula used to figure out the link value of a page, or the link juice in that type of lingo, if you follow what I'm saying. They have not used that since 2006, but they have something very similar. It's not called PageRank after Larry Page, one of the founders of Google. But what they use is something similar, and they changed it to have a little bit of a faster computational speed, because at that time in 2006, the number of documents that were on the web, the number of web pages, was going from the tens of millions into the hundreds of billions, and they needed to have something that was a little bit faster. I just thought all this was very interesting. I'm going to link all this up below if you want to go check it out and just read the different things that were mentioned in there. That's a good idea. Just kind of insightful, some of the kind of clues and just kind of things that they were saying about how Google works and how modern search engines work behind the scenes. If you have a comment or question, go ahead and leave it in the comments below. My name's John Locke. My business is Lockdown Design and SEO. I'm here every single day making videos on SEO. Would love to see you subscribe. That is all I have for now. Until next time, peace.